when I was 33, I had $500,000 of debt, much of which was from medical school. By the age of 40, I was able to retire from medicine and I had an 8-figure net worth. In this video, I want to show you a pathway to go from 6 figures of income to a multi 7 or 8-figure net worth. And if you choose to retire, there's an option to do that. Or perhaps you want to practice medicine on your own terms. And I did this all in a video I did to 500 physicians virtually, and I hope you enjoy it. Meaning your personal income, your W-2 income doesn't have to cover these needs because they're being met because of the investments you made or the business you started, right? So this is like your rent, your housing, your food, your car payments, things like that. So the goal for most physicians is about $50,000 per year, which comes out to about $4,200 per month after taxes. And obviously, we're assuming a tax rate of 35%. I will tell you how to get there in a second, but first let's talk about the next thing, which is financial independence. And so this is a much more exciting definition, right? This is your nest egg of capital generates enough cash to match your current lifestyle costs. If you're making $400,000 a year as a doctor, this essentially says, hey, I have another $400,000 coming from all these other things I've done to where I can live the current lifestyle without working as a physician. This is amazing. Essentially, this is the unlock code for your life. And in this example, I used $400,000 as an average income from all the clients I've worked with or I've interviewed or I've had the pleasure of strategizing with. You know, that seems to be a 400 to 500 is a common number I hear. So let's assume we're able to replace this income of $400,000. That's pre-tax. So that's about $33,000 a month, which is $20,000 post-tax. Okay. And finally, it's financial freedom. This is the holy grail. This is the juice. This is what we all want. The definition here is your nest of capital generates enough cash to match your dream lifestyle. This is you flying first class. This is you eating at Michelin-rated restaurants. This is you donating $20,000, $50,000 to charity, living in a nice home, nice car, nice travels, nice vacations, all of that. For most physicians, that is about $1 million a year. And that's about $83,000 a month pre-tax or $50,000 a month after tax. Just to review, we got financial stability, then we got independence, and then freedom, right? Stability is basic needs. Independence is your current lifestyle. Financial freedom is the dream lifestyle. How do we get there? Well, what I've done is I've tried to give you what I've seen work the best for medical professionals, right? These are the 3 proven paths to achieve financial independence and freedom. For those of you who don't know my story, I'm a cardiologist, and at the age of 33, I was having a significant amount of debt. I didn't know a solution of how to get out of it. I was getting paid $225,000 working in downtown DC, right? And in Maryland areas. I didn't have the growth trajectory to go much beyond that. I was consistently trading time for money, right? If I wanted more money, I had to put in more hours, right? And at some point, there's no more hours to give. Even though it was an honorable profession, I loved it. I loved my patients. I loved what I was doing. I was burning the candle on both ends. And I felt caged. I felt my creativity was stunted. My capacity was reduced. I did not have autonomy. I had to have permission to go on vacations even. I was on call every 4th weekend. I was on call on Tuesday nights. I mean, it was challenging. And fine, I can do this for a couple of years, but can you imagine doing it for the next 30? That's when I knew something had to change. That's when a switch flipped and I decided to take matters into my own hands. I still loved the practice of medicine, but I wanted to do it on my own terms. And I've realized that NCI, also known as non-clinical income, was my way out. I asked myself, hey, how are other people out there creating multiple streams of income, right? And I've seen other doctors do it. And I was very curious. And I would say one of the things is get curious, right? Start asking the deeper questions, right? Instead of asking why me, it's more like, oh, how is that person achieving my dream lifestyle, right? That's a better question. If you ask better questions, you get better answers. Again, I made it my mission to figure out how to become financially independent because I realized just by doing the traditional cardiology route, this may not hit my goals. And so this is what I found out. I want to present you a strategy where you can increase your net income by $200,000 this year. This is not a 10-year strategy. This is this year. Let's say you make $400,000. The things I'm going to share with you in the next few slides will help you get to $600,000. That's how actionable what I'm going to share with you is. So first is, how do you achieve financial stability, right? Well, we need to increase our clinical income. So this is how you add out of the $200,000. This is the first component, which is the $80,000 we're going to help you increase. Guys, I'm going to give you 9 ways to increase your income by at least $80,000. Number 1, we need to go into the niches, right? Riches are in the niches, becoming really masterful in your craft. Number 2, negotiate your salary. Number 3 is getting additional benefits or profit sharing. Number 4 is partnerships or equity in different parts of your practice. Maybe it's ownership in surgical centers, emergency rooms, dialysis centers, etc. Telehealth, consulting, expert witness work, and locums, right? Now I'm going to break each one of these down individually. So number 1 is add more value to your medical practice by developing mastery in a particular niche, right? Riches are in the niches. So what do I mean by that? Well, I have a couple of examples. One is a electrophysiology doctor that started practicing in a rural area, but at the beginning, he just decided to just be a general cardiologist and was earning a decent income. Once he realized that his unique skill sets and the fact that there's not much competition in the area, he started becoming more of an AFib specialist. He became more of a rhythm specialist. He started doing a lot of the specific procedures and testings that only a rhythm, specialist can do, and he doubled his income, right? So that's one example of going niched or going deep with your craft. The other example is a plastic surgeon. You can be a plastic surgeon and do Botox and facelifts and tummy tucks and everything else, or you can go really specialized and charge a premium by being one of the top redo rhinoplasty doctors in the country, right? This is an example of a client of mine that actually did this, and he was able to raise prices by 50%. Next is learning to negotiate your salary and negotiating benefits. A lot of the things that you're receiving are arbitrary because of the fact that no one negotiated on your behalf, right? Your salary is arbitrary. And yes, you can compare it to MGMA, but there's people who are outliers on both sides of MGMA. So consider negotiating, right? This book this book is by Chris Voss, one of the top FBI hostage negotiators in the world, and he has become a masterful negotiator, and he's written a lot of his best things in this book. And if you absorb a lot of the strategies, you can negotiate for cars better, negotiate for houses, negotiate hiring people into your own practice, hiring for you so you can get the best salary, and even profit sharing. Next is there's self-standing ERs, and there are other there are practices that you're joining, or there's emergency rooms and hospitals, and you can negotiate for equity in these practices or hospitals or ERs, right? I have a client who bought into shares of an ER, and a couple of years later, she sold her shares for $1.3 million, right? So that's how powerful these things can accelerate your income and your wealth. And next is, as a surgeon, obviously, ASCs or ambulatory surgical centers, or if you're a GI doctor and stuff like that, this is very powerful. Cardiologists can get outpatient vascular labs or outpatient labs or cath labs. Radiologists can do imaging centers. Nephrologists can do dialysis centers. These are very, very lucrative. Telehealth. There's a lot of things that are now going online. You can essentially practice like you're practicing in a clinic, but all online, and make similar salaries or even more salary. I have a dermatologist, and she's making $1 million a year doing telehealth. Consulting. Consulting is where you go into industry, into devices, into drug manufacturing, into insurance companies, and you're providing high-level services. Expert witness work, medical exams are very profitable. Locums, right? It's essentially geo arbitrage. Where are they paying the most for your profession? And if you're willing to go there, for 2 weeks out of the month, you're able to achieve a significantly higher income compared to working in your local region. We've talked about stability by increasing income. Now we're going to talk about achieving stability through increasing your savings rate, right? And unfortunately, most physicians right now save about 10% of their income, right? Imagine if you're able to increase that to 15 to 25% and you didn't really feel it. How would that change your financial destiny? Number 1 is you want to set it and forget it. Once you make things automated, you don't really feel it and you don't have to think about it. And it just starts growing and compounding naturally. Next, you really need to make the commitment to be a person who saves money and really investing that savings. Next is really, hey, what is your why, right? By you taking this delayed gratification now, how is that going to change your financial pathway? How is it going to accelerate your race to financial freedom and independence? With your increased clinical income of, from 400, now you have to 480. And if you increase your savings rate, right, from 10% to close to 20%, you get an increase of an additional $60,000 in savings there. Number 1 was increasing income. Number 2 is increasing your savings rate. The final one is decreasing your spending. I know this is a challenging one for many of you because we've worked so damn hard for so long, but it's important to do so because then you can deploy that in a strategic way and live your dream life in the future. So this is how we're going to add the last $60,000 to get you to your full 200,000. First, don't lose money, right? Don't be dumb. If you understand crypto, fantastic, but most people don't, and they lose money in it. Lending to people who have a low likelihood of paying you back, especially family members. Investing in businesses that you have no business investing in, like pizza parlors and things like that. I have a cardiologist buddy of mine who invested in a pizza chain in Florida, and he lost all his money, right? It's just, if you're not sure about the returns and they're obscure ROI, don't do it. Uncle Warren, also known as Warren Buffett, never invest in a business you cannot understand. And then there's leverage, right? There's good leverage, there's bad leverage. There's good debt, bad debt, right? If you have a good rate in your mortgage or your student loans, perhaps not paying them off fully may make sense, right? You have to think about this. A lot of times we just don't want to have any debt or obligations, and we pay everything off and we're sitting on cash in a low interest savings account and we're thinking we're doing great. But it's really using debt intelligently to grow everything. Another way is the number one expense we all have is Uncle Sam. That's taxes, right? Probably 30 to 50% of our main expense is taxes. And so learning to master that is the key. As a physician, many times you don't have much tax shelters, and that's the traditional line that you get from your advisors. But we've studied with reps status, real estate professional status, you really can offset a significant amount of your income. And so one of the powerful ways is a short-term rental loophole, that if you buy a short-term rental, also known as an Airbnb, that you can depreciate, that amount of money off your W-2. And as long as you work 100 hours on that short-term rental. So it's very powerful and very intelligent way to take some money off your income. Next, you want to start a home business or consulting company, right? And so you can go from a W-2 to a 1099. And eventually, if this is your own true business or LLC, you can make it a K-1. The key really is to become intelligent in how you're getting your income. Because if you get a W-2, there's not much you can do. But 1099, there's a little bit more leeway. K-1, there's a ton of things you can do to write off legitimate things as business expenses. So remember, profits are better than wages, and wages earn a living, which is a decent life. Profits earn a fortune, which is a fantastic life. Jim Rohn. Moving cities, right? This is where you can decrease your cost of living. A lot of times we enjoy living in these really high-end fancy cities. The ROI may not be there. So in New York, San Fran, LA, DC, Honolulu, Boston, Miami, San Diego, San Jose, Seattle, these are very expensive cities, right? So if either you're moving to the suburbs of those cities where it's slightly less expensive, or moving to, if you're geographically free and you can work from anywhere, why not move to a place that's very pleasant, very nice, has everything you want, still a big airport, but not as expensive. Something to think about. And then what you track and you measure, you improve, right? So spending a day a month on budgeting and tracking. There's a lot of software out there. YNAB, you need a budget. There used to be a program called Mint at a time. All right, we've created a financial diagnosis tool for all physicians and healthcare providers. So click in the description below and you'll get access to that. And then finally, guys, keeping up with the Joneses, though it may seem like fun, can be very expensive, right? Avoiding lifestyle inflation. The moment we get more income, most of us spend more money, right? At the beginning, we buy a tag, and eventually we want to buy a Rolex. Initially, we buy a nice 3-bedroom house. Then we want to buy a McMansion, right? Lifestyle inflation happens, right? Also, private schools. ROI, is it really needed? Do they need to start private school in kindergarten, or can you save it to middle school or even high school? Do you need to eat out at super fine dining every day, or can you start making your own food and then maybe a couple of times a month you go to a nice restaurant, right? Think about these simple strategies to start reducing lifestyle inflation. And with all of these strategies, right, canceling bloated streaming services, things like that, with all these strategies, you can eventually increase your income to $200,000 per year. As a refresher, it's $80,000 from increasing your income from all the different strategies we've talked about. Next is increasing your savings rate from 10 to 20%, getting an extra $60,000. And then finally, decreasing your expenses, yielding the last $60,000, of which the number one expense is taxes. Now the exciting part, what do we do with all this money, right? Now we have $200,000 more of income. What do we do with all of this extra capital, right? We need to achieve financial independence. How are we going to replace our financial salaries, right, as physicians? So to achieve financial independence, number one is we need to increase our assets. Buying assets is one of the smartest things a physician can do, right? And here's my top 3 assets. One is yourself. You got to invest in you. When you invest in you, you have a 30x return on investment, ROI. The best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. The more you learn, the more you earn. Warren Buffett, right? So what does it mean by investing in yourself? And there's another way to talk about it, right? People like to invest in the S&P 500, right? That's a typical 10% over 10 years, annualized return. Great. But this is like 300% return, right? When you invest in yourself, right? You become more valuable, you gain more skills. Those skills can compound. You become more profitable to the marketplace, and people want to use you and partner with you and have you in their companies or their businesses or whatever you're trying to do. So that's the key. As you get more valuable, you're going to earn more. And a way to think about this is, you're really good at math, that's level 1. Okay, now you learn accounting and bookkeeping, that's level 2. Then you become, you get an MBA, that's probably like level 3. Then you become a CFO of a company, still math, but now you're at that level, right? That's level 4, right? So that's a way where skills can compound. The second way is investing in a business. Businesses have amazing multiples. When they exit a business, usually it's 3 to 5 to even 10 times their earning of that business. If it's a SaaS business or software business, it's usually 10x. If it's like a laundromat, it could be 3 to 5x. So this is why businesses are very lucrative. And then obviously investing in real estate, right? Real estate's been around for 5,000 years. It's one of the most powerful wealth creation vehicles on the planet. And typically you can 2 to 4x your money in real estate. Number 2, decrease liabilities and expenses further. And then number 3, learn to use the cash flow quadrant. So as Kiyosaki taught in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant, there are 4 types of flavors of workers out there, right? There are employees, right? And these are people who trade time for money. There are self-employed. They still trade time for money, but now they run their own shop or their own business. And essentially, they're glorified employees. The only problem is the person they work for is themselves, and it's challenging because they can never go on vacation, right? Then there's business owners, right? This is on the right side of the quadrant. The interesting thing about business owners is they're buying back their time. They're using money to get employees. And then the final one is investors, right? You're using money to get more money, or investors. So 90% of the money, 90% of the people is on the left side of the quadrant, E and S, but it's only 10% of the money. 90% of the money is on the right side of the quadrant, the B and I, but only 10% of the people. This line, this Great Wall of China, this Berlin Wall between E, B, and S and I, a real line. And what does it take to cross over to the right side? It takes education. It takes conviction. It takes knowledge. It takes perseverance. It takes sacrifice. And it takes a willingness to learn business skills, right? And capital and education. So not many people cross over. And so a lot of people in the self-employed category think they're business owners, but they're not really, right? A true business owner can leave the business for a certain amount of time and come back, and the business is actually more profitable. I think we've talked about that. The goal is to transition to the right side of the quadrant, and the goal is to leverage, grow, and scale, and eventually become financially free and independent. And there's 3 types of trades, right? At the beginning, we all make the stage 1 trade, which is trading hours for dollars. Eventually, I want to teach you how to buy back your time, and I want you to use money to buy back your hours. And eventually, I want you to become a savvy investor and use money to buy other income streams. That's where people build empires. That's where people become titans. And so as I wrap up here, I want to share with you a story. So Warren Buffett went to Columbia Business School, and he had a really close friend there. And they both were really good at school. And in fact, as the way Warren tells it, his friend was more intelligent, was smarter, was harder working than Warren was. And when they were graduating and they're looking for their jobs, Warren went into investing, started working with Ben Graham. And then the steel investor went to a prominent steel company. I think they had a reunion 10, 15, 20 years later. The steel investor, he was doing great, but nothing crazy. While Warren, already was on his way to becoming a billionaire, right? What was the difference, right? What was the difference between the two people? The phrase that still, rings true to me is, it's not necessarily how hard you row, but what boat you're in. It's all about choosing the right opportunity vehicle to get to your goals. And Warren chose investments, and he chose the particular timing of how to do them in the right asset class, right? While the other guy chose an industry that was either plateauing or was not crushing it. Figure out how to find the right boat and get on the right boat. And with that said, guys, I hope this was helpful and you really found value in what we're doing. Take advantage of the free resource down below, and I'll catch you on the next one.